Imagine rolling out this gorgeous, incredibly detailed, multi-million-dollar architectural blueprint on an empty dirt lot.
Right. Just a totally barren lot.
Yeah, exactly. You unfold the paper, you weigh down the corners with a few rocks, you set up a lawn chair, pour yourself a glass of iced tea, and you just wait.
You're just sitting there.
Right.
Yeah.
You sit there waiting for the wood to frame itself, which, I mean, it sounds completely absurd.
Oh,
Sure.
absolutely. Yeah. No one would actually do that.
But according to the research we're diving into today, this is exactly how so many leaders approach their most passionate projects. Like, they literally mistake having a vision for having a plan.
It's a very common trap because you have the picture in your head, right?
Yeah.
And the desire is incredibly genuine, but there's this massive disconnect. I mean, a house doesn't build itself just because the drawing is beautiful.
Right. Or because the people who want to live in it are, really good, well-intentioned people.
Exactly. Good intentions don't pour concrete.
They really don't. And that gap, that space between intention and execution is exactly what we're unpacking today.
It's a big one.
It is. Welcome to the deep dive, everybody. Today is Friday, April 10th, 2026, and we are looking at this fascinating framework buried in a manuscript on leading ministry and community projects. It's called 013 Leading Ministry Projects.pdf.
Which is it's a very unassuming title for such heavy material.
It really is. But our mission today is to explore the brutal mechanics of translating a profound spiritual vision or even just like a deeply held community goal into a tangible reality.
Right. Because that translation process is everything.
It is. So let me ask you, the listener, right now, have you ever been part of a group, like a workplace team, a neighborhood initiative, maybe a volunteer board?
Oh, I'm sure everyone has at some point.
Right. And you had this inspiring, beautiful idea, but then it just slowly fizzled out into total confusion and exhaustion.
With the worst feeling, just that slow drain of energy.
Yeah. Today, we are going to look at the psychology and the sociology of exactly why that happens.
And how to fix it, thankfully.
Yes, exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Because this material, it completely flips the script on what it means to be organized.
It really requires a complete paradigm shift. I mean, culturally, we tend to view structure and administration as these cold, rigid concepts,
Yeah, like corporate red tape.
Exactly. We think of spreadsheets, timelines, budgets. We see them as the enemies of passion.
Oh, for sure. Like they're draining the life out of the vision.
Right. There is this deeply romanticized ideal that if a project is truly authentic, it should be, spontaneous.
Like it should just flow naturally.
Yes. But the core premise we are looking at today argues the exact opposite. It says structure is not the enemy of compassion. Structure is actually how love and compassion become reliable.
Wait, structure makes love reliable. That is, wow.
Yeah, because without it, good intentions are just a spark, and sparks burn out quickly.
Right, they don't last.
But with structure, they become a hearth, a fireplace that can actually keep people warm over the long haul.
I love that, a hearth. I want to dig into that romanticization of spontaneity for a second, because we see it literally everywhere.
Oh, it's baked into our culture.
It really is. We love the myth of the startup founders sketching a billion-dollar idea on a bar napkin in a burst of pure inspiration.
Right, the light bulb moment.
Yeah. And we love the emotional high of the kickoff meeting. But we absolutely hate the 40-page operational spreadsheet that has to follow it.
Because the spreadsheet is boring. It's friction.
Exactly. The framework brings up this concept of applied faith, pulling from the ancient proverb that faith without works is dead.
Right, from the Book of James.
Yeah. It suggests that a vision remaining purely in the imagination is actually, it's a psychological escape hatch.
That is exactly the mechanism at play here. It allows a person, or honestly a whole committee, to feel the emotional dopamine hit of being faithful and virtuous without ever actually having to become responsible.
Wow. So you get the high of caring without doing the work?
Exactly. It is infinitely easier to admire a burden than to actually carry it.
Oh, that's heavy.
Right.
Yeah.
Because when you just talk about a vision, you get all the social credit of caring about a problem, say like homelessness in your city or youth mentorship.
Yeah, everyone tells you how great you are for caring.
Right, but you avoid all the friction of doing anything about it.
But let me let me play devil's advocate here for a second, because the cultural narrative pushes back really hard on
That's
this.
for sure it does.
Isn't heavy planning sometimes viewed as a lack of trust in the process? Or, in spiritual communities, a lack of
Well,
faith?
people definitely say that.
Right, like if you are relying on a highly detailed risk assessment matrix, aren't you essentially saying you don't trust the universe or you don't trust God to provide the safety net?
The let go and let God mentality.
Exactly. Going back to that house analogy, there's a mindset that says if the house is meant to be, the doors will just open themselves.
It's a very pervasive mindset.
Yeah.
But what is fascinating here is how systematically the source material dismantles that exact false divide between spirituality and strategy.
How so?
Well, the argument is that planning is not the opposite of faith. Poor planning is actually faith's greatest obstacle.
Oh, wow. Okay, unpack that.
If you look at the theological foundations provided in the material, order is a reflection of divine character.
Right.
Look at the Genesis creation narrative. It wasn't random. It was meticulously sequenced. Light, then land, then life.
Oh, right. It wasn't just a chaotic explosion of good intentions.
Exactly. And look at the historical accounts of the tabernacle. It had incredibly precise blueprints, architectural measurements, and very specifically assigned human roles.
Which is wild because we usually just skim past all those measurements when we read it.
We do.
Yeah.
But they're there for a reason.
The material even brings up the historical account of Jesus feeding the 5,000, which is, that is usually taught as this ultimate moment of spontaneous, miraculous provision, right?
Right. Like food just magically raining down on a crowd.
Yeah. But there's a massive organizational component to that event that completely gets glossed over.
Precisely. The text highlights that before any food was ever distributed, Jesus didn't just throw bread at a chaotic mob.
Which would have been a disaster, by the way.
Complete riot. No, he organized the crowd first. He had them sit down in specific manageable groups of 50s and 100s.
So he essentially built a distribution matrix.
He literally did. The distribution was systematic. And afterward, there was a whole cleanup phase.
Right, gathering the leftovers so nothing was wasted. 12 baskets full, if I remember right.
Exactly. So the overarching point is that avoiding structure isn't holy. It's just negligent. God is not a God of chaos. Therefore, organizing a project well, sequencing the steps, and managing the resources, that is a reflection of that character, not a departure from it.
Which means when we refuse to build that structure, we end up with what the material calls the quiet tragedy of untranslated vision.
Untranslated vision. That is such a haunting phrase.
It really is. The idea that a burden or a passion must be translated into a process or else it literally harms people. We don't usually equate disorganization with harm. We equate it with maybe inefficiency, like, oh, we're just a little messy. But harm is a strong word.
It is strong, but it is entirely accurate when you look at the sociological impact. Good intentions alone do not feed hungry people.
Right.
They don't mentor young people.
Right.
When leadership refuses to translate a grand vision into a clear, actionable process, they are placing an invisible, crushing cognitive load on their volunteers.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And that unstructured passion, it eventually leads to deep, deep organizational burnout.
Because you're asking people to run a marathon, but you haven't given them a route map.
You haven't set up water stations.
Exactly, and you haven't even defined where the finish line is. You just stand on a podium with a megaphone yelling, "Running is amazing, keep running."
And eventually people get really tired of hearing the inspiring speech.
Right, especially when they know there is no infrastructure to support them. It breeds exhaustion and, inevitably, a deep, cynical mistrust of the leadership.
Exactly. And if you want to understand how to actually build that infrastructure, the historical case study of Nehemiah is presented as the ultimate masterclass here.
Yes, the Nehemiah story.
The ancient account of Nehemiah rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem operates as a perfect, timeless project management manual.
It really does.
But to understand his success, you have to look at where he begins. He does not start in a boardroom.
No.
He doesn't kick things off with a whiteboard brainstorming session or a charismatic speech.
He starts in tears. He receives a report that the walls of his ancestral city are broken down, the gates are burned, and his immediate response is profound grief, fasting, and prayer.
He sits in the rubble emotionally before he ever touches it physically.
Which is such a countercultural way to start a project.
It really is. And this
Wow.
highlights a crucial psychological principle. Burden precedes action because burden purifies motivation.
Wait, burden purifies motivation?
Yes. And this is vital for you, the listener, to grasp right now. Whether you are trying to launch a charity, restructure a corporate division, or fix a broken system in your local school,
Because if the motivation is wrong.
the project dies. A vision born purely from convenience, or worse, from ego. The desire to be seen as the savior of the project.
Oh, the hero complex.
Exactly. That kind of motivation will inevitably collapse under the weight of resistance.
Because as soon as it gets hard, the ego isn't fed anymore.
Right. But a vision born from a genuine, agonizing grief, an ache that looks at a broken system and says, this is unacceptable. I literally cannot sleep until this is fixed.
Yeah.
That kind of vision has endurance. It has been tested and purified in the heart before it ever asks the hands to do the work.
That is so powerful. But the brilliance of Nehemiah is that he doesn't stay paralyzed in the weeping phase. Like, he doesn't just cry forever.
No, he lets the grief fuel the logistics.
He travels to Jerusalem. But before he rallies the troops, before he makes any grand public declaration of his intentions to the city, he goes on this covert nighttime inspection of the broken walls.
The discipline of quiet assessment.
Yes, he rides a horse or, an animal through the ruins in the dark, entirely alone, just looking at the rubble.
He doesn't want anyone to see him yet.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
He gathers accurate empirical data first. Think about the cognitive biases a leader avoids by doing this.
Oh, it's massive.
We see leaders all the time who announce massive initiatives based on pure assumption. They fall victim to the Dunning-Kruger effect, right?
Overestimating their ability to fix a problem they don't actually understand.
Exactly. Or they suffer from optimism bias, assuming the ruins aren't as bad as people say. Like,
Yeah.
oh, we can fix this in a weekend.
Right, it'll be easy.
But Nehemiah refuses to romanticize the problem. He gets his own eyes on the actual physical rot.
It's a profound mental model for leadership. You literally cannot lead effectively if you refuse to investigate reality.
Wow.
And by keeping it quiet initially, he prevents premature panic or premature excitement. But his assessment wasn't just about the problem. It was also about the solution.
Right, because he didn't just show up empty-handed.
Exactly. Before he ever left for Jerusalem, he went to the king and requested specific letters of safe passage.
Like passports.
Right. And he requested requisitions for timber from the royal forest. He secured his supply chain before he ever left.
Proving that foresight is not faithlessness.
Precisely.
He didn't just pray for the walls to rebuild themselves. He literally went and got the wood.
He got the wood. And when he finally does address the people, his framing of reality is masterful.
How does he frame it?
He tells the absolute truth about the ruin. He doesn't sugarcoat it at all. He says, you see the distress we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste?
He owns the bad news.
He owns it. But he balances that sober, unvarnished view of the problem with a deeply confident view of the solution and the resources he has already secured.
Oh, that is so smart.
It's that delicate balance, brutal honesty about the current state, combined with structured hope for the future state.
Brutal honesty and structured hope.
That is the exact cocktail that inspires people to say, let us rise up and build.
Because they know he's not delusional, but they also know he's prepared.
Exactly.
Which brings us to the actual mechanics of building. Once you have the burden, once you've done the quiet assessment, how do you actually construct the administrative architecture of a project today?
Right. Moving from theory to practice.
Yeah. The framework introduces this incredible concept of organized love, which is executed through specific tools, objectives, timelines, and budgets.
Let's start with objectives, because this is where a lot of projects derail immediately.
Oh, for sure.
The core argument here is that vague callings produce vague results.
Always.
If a team says, we want to help the community, that is a lovely sentiment, right? But it is not an objective.
Because it lacks operational friction.
Yes. To force clarity, the material demands leaders answer 4 vital questions. What exactly are we trying to do? Who is it for? Why does it matter? And what specific change should result?
Those questions seem so basic on the surface, but if you've ever sat in a boardroom or a community planning meeting, you know that answering them is essentially a blood sport.
Oh, it causes so many arguments.
Let's take a hypothetical. Say a neighborhood group wants to build a community garden. They all agree on the, what, a garden.
Right, sounds peaceful enough.
But what happens if they haven't explicitly answered the who? Like, half the committee thinks the garden is for local elementary schools to learn about agriculture.
Okay.
The other half thinks it's a high-yield plot to provide fresh produce for the local food bank.
And right there, you have a massive conflict.
Right, and that discrepancy is exactly what leads to operational drift.
Because if the garden is for school children, you need wide, safe pathways.
Yeah, low raised beds so the kids can reach them, educational signage everywhere.
Exactly. But if it's for maximum yield for a food bank, you need dense planting. You need industrial composting.
You probably need restricted access, too, to protect the crops from being trampled by kids.
Right. Both are noble goals, but they require entirely different architectural and operational choices.
And if you don't lock down the who, your team will eventually work at cross purposes. They'll waste resources and become deeply frustrated with one another, all because the objective wasn't translated clearly enough.
That happens all the time. People think they are arguing about soil types, but they are actually arguing about the who.
Wow, that is such a good point.
Once you have that clarity, you have to sequence it.
Right.
And this is where the concept of timelines comes in.
Right.
But the material doesn't talk about timelines as just a tool for productivity, which is how we usually view them.
Yeah, we view them as a whip to make people work faster.
Exactly. But the source material calls project milestones a mercy to the team.
A mercy. I think that framing is revolutionary.
It completely changes how you look at project management. A timeline is actually a pastoral caring tool.
How so?
Well, think about the psychology of a volunteer or an employee staring down a massive year-long initiative. The human brain struggles to process monolithic tasks.
Oh, absolutely. It induces total paralysis and overwhelm.
Right. By breaking a massive vision down into sequential steps like what happens in week 1, what cannot happen until week 4.
What we absolutely do not need to worry about until month 6.
Yes, you are relieving your team of the illusion that everything must be done today.
You're giving them permission to pace themselves.
Exactly. You're creating psychological safety boundaries around their energy.
So a timeline essentially says you only need to carry this specific brick today.
Yes, and that is a profound mercy.
Man, that is good. But the piece of this architecture that really stopped me in my tracks was the third element. Budgets.
Well, the budgets?
Yeah, we all know how to make a spreadsheet. The paradigm shift here isn't mathematical, it's moral.
Which is quite a statement.
The material defines budgeting as hospitality in numeric form.
Hospitality in numeric form.
I really had to chew on that. Because usually, a budget is the bad cop.
It's the fun police.
Yes, it's the mechanism of restriction, the thing that says no to our grandest ideas. But if we reframe a budget as hospitality, well, hospitality is fundamentally about anticipating someone's needs, right?
Right.
If I invite you to my house for dinner, I don't just hope food magically appears on the table.
I would hope not.
Right. I go to the grocery store, I buy the ingredients, I prepare the table.
Okay.
So a budget is essentially a leader saying to their team, I have anticipated the cost of this mission so you don't have to pay it out of your own emotional or financial pocket.
That is the exact mechanism.
Yeah.
You are actively removing the invisible tax on your team.
The invisible tax.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because counting the costs before you begin is an act of truthfulness and moral duty.
Absolutely.
If you launch a project without knowing what it will actually cost in terms of money, man-hours, and materials, you are basically making promises you cannot keep.
And this is where the framework issues a severe warning against what it terms spiritualized disorganization.
Yes.
Wait, spiritualized disorganization sounds like a very polite theological way of saying weaponized incompetence.
That is essentially what it is, yes.
Are we talking about leaders who genuinely believe they are stepping out in faith, or leaders who are just too lazy to open Excel and do the math?
It's often a toxic blend of both, honestly.
Really?
Yeah. It occurs when leaders use phrases like, the universe will provide, or we just need to trust the process as a smokescreen for their own administrative negligence.
Wow. So they use faith language to hide the fact that they didn't do their homework?
Exactly. They haven't done the math, they haven't secured the supply chain, and they cloak that lack of preparation in highly spiritualized or visionary language. The material does not mince words here. It labels poor planning as a moral failure.
A moral failure. Why so harsh?
Because of the psychological concept of the diffusion of responsibility, coupled with the sheer weight placed on the boots on the ground.
Okay, unpack that.
When the visionary leader's budget inevitably runs out, or the supplies aren't there on build day, the leader rarely pays the price.
Well, that's so true. They're usually in an office somewhere.
Right. The invisible, crushing weight falls squarely on the shoulders of the volunteers, or the entry-level employees who are desperately trying to hold the broken pieces together on the front lines.
Because they're the ones facing the angry people.
Exactly. It forces them to sacrifice their own weekends, their own money, or their own mental health to bridge the gap the leader left behind.
And that destroys trust.
Completely. It exhausts people and, over time, trains them to view any future visionary ideas with deep protective cynicism.
Because they know a vision just means more unpaid overtime for them.
Precisely.
I really want you, the listener, to pause and hold up a mirror right now. Think about the projects you are currently leading, or the ones you are participating in. Are you using vague, inspiring language to hide a lack of operational readiness?
It's a tough question.
It is. Are you relying on the passion of your team to cover up the fact that you don't actually have a plan? It is a deeply uncomfortable audit to perform on yourself, but it is the only way to move from chaos to reliability.
It demands total accountability.
It does.
But the good news is that you don't have to carry that accountability alone.
Thank goodness.
Right. In fact, if you try to carry it all alone, you will destroy the project anyway.
Which opens up the vulnerability of human capital, because you can have the most lovingly crafted timeline, you can have a perfectly hospitable budget, but if one person is holding all the strings, the bottleneck hasn't been removed. It's just been highly organized.
Exactly. You're just efficiently blocking everyone else.
Right. To execute a grand vision, you need a team. Which brings us to the profound and honestly often misunderstood practice of delegation.
The historical texts take a very, very firm stance against the myth of the hero leader.
The person who tries to do everything themselves.
Right. There's a deeply ingrained cultural narrative that doing everything personally proves your supreme commitment to the cause.
Oh yeah, we wear sleep deprivation and overwhelm as badges of honor. Like, I worked 80 hours this week.
Exactly. We celebrate that. But the reality is that a leader who refuses to delegate is not saving the organization. They are capping its potential.
The text leans heavily on a famous historical interaction between Moses and his father-in-law, Jethro.
Such a classic case study in management.
It really is. Moses is leading this massive nation of Israelites, and he is personally sitting as the judge for every single trivial dispute among millions of people from morning until evening.
Imagine the line of people waiting for him.
It must have been miles long. He is completely burning out. And Jethro pulls him aside and says essentially, what you are doing is fundamentally unsustainable. You are going to wear yourself out, and you are going to exhaust the people waiting in line.
He had to learn to distribute the burden systematically.
Right. He had to set up leaders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens.
We see the exact same multiplication principle with Nehemiah.
How so?
Well, when it came time to actually rebuild the wall, Nehemiah didn't grab a trowel and try to lay every stone himself. He didn't run around the city frantically trying to be the main builder.
Right. He was the governor, not a bricklayer.
Exactly. He assigned very specific sections of the wall to specific groups. And the text lists them out. The goldsmiths rebuild a section. The merchants rebuilt a section.
Wait, the goldsmiths? Like, guys who make fine jewelry were out there laying heavy stone?
Yes. Which shows he mobilized everyone, not just construction workers. And even more brilliant, families were assigned the portion of the wall directly in front of their own houses.
Oh, that is a brilliant localized incentive. If the wall in front of your house falls down, your family is the first one in danger.
Exactly. You're going to build that section really well. He empowered ordinary people to do extraordinary work.
But I want to challenge this from the perspective of, like, a stressed out middle manager today.
Okay, let's hear it.
The common refrain is, it's so much faster if I just do it myself.
I hear that all the time.
And honestly, in the short term, that's often true. Training someone else takes time, they will make mistakes, the quality might dip initially. So why shouldn't a leader just muscle through it?
Because of the long-term psychological and organizational cost.
Okay, explain that.
Think about the psychology of a leader who refuses to delegate. It usually isn't actually about efficiency or a supreme work ethic.
What is it about, then?
It is rooted in ego, a need for control, or a fear of irrelevance.
Ouch.
It's the subconscious belief that nobody can do this but me, or if I'm not exhausted, I'm not valuable.
Wow.
But the material frames delegation not as a shifting of tasks, but as an act of discipleship.
Discipleship, meaning
Yeah.
it's fundamentally a teaching mechanism.
Precisely.
Yeah.
When a leader actually shares real responsibility, and I mean real ownership, not just menial tasks.
Right, not just go get me coffee.
Exactly. When you give them real ownership, you are communicating something vital to your team. You're saying your intellect matters, your gifts are necessary here. By handing over the reins, you are teaching people how to lead, how to navigate failure, and how to mature through the friction of carrying actual weight.
So if you're hoarding all the tasks, you're basically hoarding all the growth.
Exactly. You are actively starving your team of the reps they need to build their own leadership muscles.
You might think you're being a martyr for the cause by working 80-hour WITs, but you are actually stunting the organization's future capacity.
Yes, a leader who delegates well isn't losing control. They are cultivating capacity.
It's a transition from being a primary producer to being a developer of people.
Exactly.
But this brings us to a highly volatile phase of any project. Because once you have empowered your team, once budget is hospitable and the timeline is clear and the real work actually begins,
That's when the trouble starts.
yeah, you will inevitably hit a wall of your own.
Resistance.
Resistance. The moment you start building anything of value, the universe seems to push back.
Resistance is not a possibility. It is an absolute guarantee.
Always.
The material uses Nehemiah's historical enemies, primarily these figures named Sanballat and Tobiah, to illustrate the anatomy of opposition.
And they were relentless.
They were. They didn't just disagree with the project, they actively tried to dismantle it. They used mockery, they spread political rumors, and they eventually escalated to threats of physical violence.
Which made the physical reality for Nehemiah's workers incredibly intense. To adapt to the threat, the builders literally had to hold a trowel in one hand to lay the stones,
Right.
and a weapon in the other hand to defend themselves. Construction and vigilance simultaneously. It's such a striking image of resilience.
It really is. And it highlights that resistance comes in many forms. It can be external,
Right.
right? Critics shouting from the sidelines, funding getting pulled, competitors moving against you.
Sure.
But it can also be internal.
Team fatigue.
Exactly. Team fatigue, unexpected supply chain failures, or infighting among the crew.
So how did Nehemiah handle it?
The key mental model Nehemiah provides is that he did not interpret resistance as proof that the mission was inherently flawed.
Oh, that's huge. Because so many of us hit a roadblock and think, well, I guess this wasn't meant to be.
Right. The door closed, so God must be saying no. But Nehemiah didn't assume that. He treated the friction as the natural cost of faithful building.
But this is exactly where I need to push back hard on this framework.
Yep.
The framework talks about how enemies will try to pull you off the wall with distractions and endless requests for meetings. And Nehemiah's famous response to his critics who keep asking him to come down to the plane to talk is, I am doing a great work and I cannot come down.
It's one of the most powerful lines in the entire text.
It is powerful, but honestly, isn't I am doing a great work and I cannot come down exactly the kind of thing an arrogant, toxic leader says when they are ignoring valid HR complaints?
Oh, I see where you're going.
Right. Or when they are refusing to listen to community feedback that their project is actually causing gentrification? How do you prevent this idea of strategic discernment from just becoming an echo chamber where a leader ignores everyone who disagrees with them?
That is the most crucial question of the entire process.
Because it can easily become toxic.
It can. And it hinges on understanding the deep difference between constructive friction and destructive noise.
Okay, what's the difference?
A toxic leader uses I cannot come down as a shield to protect their ego from accountability.
Right.
But a faithful leader uses it as a shield to protect the mission from derailment.
So what is the metric for telling them apart? How do you, as a listener trying to lead a project, know which is which?
You have to evaluate the source and the trajectory of the critique against your core objective.
Yeah.
Does this person's feedback aim to make the wall stronger, or does their feedback aim to stop the wall from being built altogether?
Oh, that's a great filter.
Right. Because valid correction usually comes from someone who is in the dirt with you,
Yeah.
or someone who is directly impacted by the project.
Right, like the community members.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Their critique is about the structural integrity of what you are doing. If someone says, hey, the mortar on this section is weak, it's going to collapse, you absolutely listen. You pause and fix it.
Because that feedback actually serves the ultimate goal of a strong wall.
Yes. But a toxic distraction, the Sanballat and Tobiah kind of noise, operates totally differently.
How so?
It is usually characterized by bad faith, endless demands for justification, and a desire to draw you into peripheral debates that just drain your operational energy.
The peripheral debates, the endless back and forth emails that go nowhere.
Exactly. They don't want the wall built better. They want you exhausted so you stop laying bricks.
So, strategic discernment means recognizing when a conversation is no longer about the work, but about managing someone else's dysfunction or jealousy.
Precisely.
The material paints this incredible mental picture. Imagine the wind is howling. You are standing on top of this partially built, precarious wall.
Eye up in the air.
Yeah, and critics are standing down at the bottom shouting up at you. They're telling you that you're doing it wrong, that you're unqualified, or that you need to climb all the way down to the valley and explain yourself to them over coffee.
Just endless demands for your time.
Right. And the builder has to decide in that split second, do I surrender my momentum, climb all the way down there to argue and defend my character, or do I stay up here and keep laying stones?
And the discipline of the builder is realizing that some things are just noise.
You do not owe an explanation to every critic who demands one.
No, you don't. The author writes that caution and vigilance should serve the calling, but they must never replace it.
So you stay alert, but you don't stop working.
Exactly. You post guards, you hold your weapon, you remain aware of the threats, but you do not drop the trowel. Holiness in that moment looks like staying focused on the brick right in front of you.
That is an incredibly empowering mental model for anyone dealing with imposter syndrome or external critics.
It really is.
It gives you permission to just let the work speak for itself.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a breath and connect the massive sociological and psychological dots we've covered in this deep dive today.
You've covered a lot of ground.
We really have. We started by confronting the delusion of the dirt lot, the danger of untranslated vision, where we expect good intentions to magically execute themselves.
Right, the waiting for the house to build itself.
Exactly. We analyzed how a project must begin not in a boardroom, but with a purified burden.
A grief that investigates reality.
Yes, through a quiet, unromanticized assessment of the ruins.
From there, we explored the translation of that burden into the architecture of organized love.
Organized love.
We looked at the necessity of defining clear objectives to prevent operational drift, the mercy of sequencing timelines to prevent cognitive overload.
And the moral imperative of treating a budget as an act of hospitality toward your team,
Again,
dissipating the costs so they don't have to.
Exactly.
We challenged the toxic myth of the hero leader, reframing delegation not as a shortcut, but as the deepest form of organizational discipleship, teaching others how to carry the weight.
And finally, we examined the absolute necessity of strategic discernment, having the courage to hold the trowel in one hand and a weapon in the other.
Ignoring the noise of bad faith critics to stay focused on the wall.
It is a comprehensive, deeply human framework for moving from inspiration to execution.
It really is. And the beauty of these principles is their universal application. Whether you are trying to launch an after-school program, restructure a massive corporate division, or simply establish new, healthier rhythms in your own family.
Applied faith always means doing the quiet, structured work of translation.
It absolutely does. But before we sign off, there is one final lingering thought embedded in the philosophy of this material that we really wanted to leave you with, because it brings the entire framework intimately close to home.
Yes. This is the part that really challenged me.
Me too.
We've spent this entire time talking about external projects, building literal walls, launching community initiatives, managing teams. But consider this paradigm shift. Your own life is a project.
Wow.
If an external auditor were to come in right now and review your personal timeline and your personal budget, what kind of blueprint would they find?
That is a terrifying thought.
It is. Do the structures of your daily calendar and your bank statements actually reflect the deepest, most genuine burdens of your heart?
Or are you living with untranslated vision, just hoping that your good intentions regarding your health, your relationships, and your purpose will somehow just organize themselves?
Exactly.
Man, that brings us right back to the empty dirt lot, doesn't it?
It really does.
Are you sitting in the lawn chair staring at the beautiful imaginary blueprint of the life you want, just waiting for the house to build itself? Or are you finally willing to pick up the hammer, count the cost, and do the work?
That's the question.
It is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep investigating reality, keep asking the hard questions, and above all, go out there and build what you believe.